Hey everyone, it's Adaline Bebo, and if you follow me on Instagram, you know that one of my favorite things to do is answer your questions and pass on all of my twirling wisdom. While I get tons of requests for certain tips or tricks on specific twirling moves, I actually have separate videos reserved for those, so today I'm going to be sticking to twirling wisdom and advice. In the last 15 years that I've been twirling, I've collected quite the wealth of information, and I'm really excited to share it with you all today. So with that, let's jump in. Okay, so my first question, I think that every twirler's most frequently asked question is, how did I get my start in twirling? Anytime I introduce myself to someone and tell them that I'm a twirler, that's immediately their first question is, why did you pick that and how did you get started in it? So for me, I wish it was a straightforward answer. I wish that I could say that whether my mom twirled or my grandma twirled or I joined a local club, but I honestly don't know why I chose twirling. I started dance and ballet, tap, jazz when I was 3 years old. My mom put me in it because I had so much energy. I was constantly bouncing off the walls. So she put me in dance, and at the age of 6, I told her that I wanted to be a baton twirler. I figure I must have seen it in a parade or on TV or something, but she began looking for a coach, and right about then she put me in competitive cheerleading, competitive hip hop dancing, if you could imagine me hip hop dancing. And a couple of years later, when I was 9, we finally found a coach. She lived about an hour away, and twice a week for 4 years, we drove an hour there and an hour back for twirling lessons, and I absolutely fell in love with the sport. Question number 2, who makes my costumes? This is one of my favorite topics because for me, the costume is half the performance. Might not be for the judges, but it is for me. So my mom used to always tell me growing up, look like a princess, feel like a princess, twirl like a princess, and that's the truth. I always twirled better when I was wearing a costume that I loved. So many of my favorite costumes have been made by either Pearsall Designs or Brad Griffies. And it's usually a collaboration between the designer and I. I scour Pinterest for months before, searching for inspo photos. I really take into account what colors I know look good on my skin tone and what flatters my body shape the best. We go back and forth, we collaborate together to create a design that I love, and then even after that, it always comes out way better than I even imagined, and it's always covered in rhinestones. Question number 3 is how to prepare for college or high school or school tryouts or auditions of any kind. I was a feature twirler at Baylor University for 5 years, and I learned a lot in my time there, and a lot of things I wished I had known before I even auditioned at schools. For one, it's that college twirling and school twirling is all about heart. It's a lot less about talent than you might expect, but it's about being able to show your enthusiasm for your school, for your sport, and for yourself, all the way to the top row, the back row of the nosebleeds. That means so much more to a band director or college twirling coordinator than anything else. When you're performing for your school, it's not about showing off your hardest or coolest tricks. It's about showing things that are impressive to an audience who knows nothing about twirling. So things like back neck rolls and illusions that might not be your hardest skill actually come off as way more exciting. So be sure to focus on what you do best and not on what you think will score the highest necessarily. If there's an interview with the staff or the coordinator for a college or a school position of any kind, this is a time for you to show your enthusiasm in person, but also to show how well you can interact with others. A huge job of any feature twirler is to be a good role model. So being able to positively interact with fans, with little girls who come up to you in between those performances, in between those half times, is really an important aspect that they're looking for. Question number 4 is, how do I balance twirling, school, and all of my other activities? And this is a great question, and it's a question that it took me years to answer. Finding the right balance to be able to juggle all of the things that you want and the goals that you have takes a lot of trial and error, unfortunately. But one thing that really worked for me was early morning practices, late night practices, practices in between things. But one thing that really worked for me was going back to basics. So in between classes, whenever I had time, I would find a small space, usually in the racquetball court of my rec center, and I would drill my roll sections, drill my short program elements, my spins, my contact sections. And for me, those help me build up into the bigger picture of improving my routines overall. Question number 5, how do I stay motivated? When I say that I've had more than a few terrible practice days, I truly mean it, so I get this question. There's nothing like looking at your big twirling goals and just feeling like you just can't accomplish them after a rough day at practice. One thing that I love to do is make lists. I make tons of lists all the time, and that includes for practice. So what I'll do before each practice is I'll set a couple goals for myself. I'll set one big overarching goal, like today I want to improve my expression in my routines. And then for each routine, I'll set little small goals, like in this routine, I want to have a perfect roll section, or in this one, I want to catch my ending and my opening tricks. And these things allow me to micro-focus on little things rather than focus on, oh my gosh, this is such a big, overwhelming, difficult routine, but allows me to hone in on exactly what it is that I want to improve on that. Of course, the feeling of checking those things off of the list is not only satisfying, but it lets you see how much closer you are to getting your goals. Number 6, overcoming bad performances. I've had more than a few really terrible performances in my time, and I know how tough they can be to overcome, especially mentally. If you're like me, you get into your own head, you beat yourself up, and you really have a tendency to overthink things. But I actually one time worked with a sports psychologist who taught me something really valuable. And that's that when you come off of the floor, come off of the practice floor even, this is in performance and in practice, tell yourself 3 good things about that performance so that the next time that you come around to that same routine, you have those 3 good things solidified in your mind as your most recent memory of them. If you come off and you beat yourself up immediately, the next time that you do that routine, you're gonna feel those scary thoughts. But by seeding those really positive things, no matter how small, truly I feel like there are times that you can't come up with anything positive, but it's everything from I breathed throughout my routine, or I smiled when I tossed this trick. They can be that small, but they create this positive seed in your mind that will allow you to come back later and feel those positive thoughts again, so it doesn't become a mental block and you don't psych yourself out. Obviously, once you're past the performance, this tip isn't really helpful, but you can continue to feed yourself positive thoughts throughout practice. One thing that definitely helped me toward the end of my career was learning to laugh at myself. And I know that this is way easier said than done, but understanding that twirling is just a small part of your life, and one performance doesn't define who you are. You are defined by how hard you work, how much love you put into things, and how much you love sharing your passion with the world. So don't let that one performance define who you are, because it certainly doesn't. Kind of on that same note, question number 7 is overcoming performance nerves. I struggled for many, many years with performance nerves, but I made a couple changes that totally changed my mindset and my perspective on twirling. I obviously have a tendency to overthink things, like I said before, but one way that I could calm myself down and control my adrenaline before performance was through my breathing. I found that breathing in for 4 counts and out for 6 counts, breathing out longer than I breathed in, allowed me to control that adrenaline level and bring it to where I was comfortable and not overexcited. One of the big changes that I made last year was shifting from the competitor to the performer. I went out to perform for the audience and not to compete against anyone or even compete against myself. This took a lot of extra pressure off, and it made every routine I did a lot more fun. Something that I did when I was younger was I would pretend like I was someone else. So before my solo, I'd pretend like I was Carissa Wimberly, and this gave me this huge confidence boost and almost allowed me to kind of get out of my own head and project something that I really wanted, and that was a really successful solo routine. So that's one tip that I definitely recommend. One of my next most frequently asked questions is, how did it feel when I won insert championship here? What is my most memorable moment? And for me, the most memorable moments were beyond the things that won me medals or trophies. They were all the moments in between that I got to spend with my twirling friends, hugging little twirlers, taking pictures with everyone, and just enjoying being in the moment. But I will say that there's nothing quite like standing on the podium for the first time I ever won a medal for the United States at the 2017 International Cup in Croatia. Hearing my name called, going up to the podium, being presented with the gold medal, and then hearing the national anthem, it still gives me chills. And then the same thing when I won the World Championship in 2018 in Norway for X-Strut. Just being up there and hearing the crowd and knowing that they're cheering not only for you, but for what you've done for the country is so exciting and so rewarding. Okay, question number 9 is, how often do I practice? I've done a lot of different training schedules over the years, but finding one that worked best with school, twirling, and all of my other activities was tricky. Monday through Friday, I would practice 4:30 in the morning to 7:30 in the morning in the big arena at school. And during this time, I took to do full-out run-throughs, big tricks, and anything else that I needed to do while I had the arena. And then my last practice for the day while training for something like the World Championships would be from about 7 to 9 p.m. I would spend that time drilling any other sections that I think needed extra work or doing more full-out run-throughs. On the weekends, I would practice anywhere from 5 to 9 hours a day. Sometimes I would break it up just to give myself a break in between things, and I would segment practices based on how much energy they required, because obviously I was pretty tired by the end of the day, and then I always take Sundays off. Obviously, this depended on the time of year, whether I was training for an upcoming competition or if it was the off season. I would find ways to prioritize the things I needed to practice. And juggling between 2 twirling organizations, I had around 10 routines, so I made sure to separate them to do them on different days so I didn't overwork myself and get injured. Question number 10, how to incorporate more dance and bodywork into twirling. This was one of the most exciting parts for me in the creative process of my routines, and one strategy that I really loved and that I used for a lot of my favorite routines was going to a dance choreographer, having something choreographed specifically for my freestyle music, and then taking that to my twirling coaches and incorporating the baton with the body. This not only allowed me to come up with something fresh and creative, but it helped me get out of the headspace of just twirling, twirling, twirling. It allowed me to kind of see a world of creativity outside of it and incorporate the two to create something fresh and new. 2 of my favorites that I went to again and again for a couple of my favorite routines were Whitney Stone and Larkin Dance Studio in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So with that, I've answered my top 10 most frequently asked questions from all of you. And if you liked some of these tips and tricks, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment below to let me know what kind of advice with Addie you want to see next time.